Hi, this is Jon Ericson, and I have with me Sue Corner. Why don't you introduce yourself, Sue?
Hi, everybody. I'm Sue Corner. I'm the Dean of Undergraduate Admission at Willamette University in Salem, Oregon. And for full disclosure, I also happen to be a Willamette alum, and I have a daughter who's currently attending Willamette. So I'm in deep at this institution, lots of connections. But I've been the Dean of Admission, or I've been working in the Office of Admission for close to 20 years. So this has been a long time home for me.
How was that conversation with your daughter? Was it like, hey, you've got to come here because I'm here? Or was she like,
No, it wasn't that way at all, although that's understandable. No, she did a broad college search, and it was really fun for me to be part of that with her. It felt like kind of secret shopping and getting to see the way other places do things. Really helpful, and I learned a lot. But no, she did a broad college search. It just ultimately this was the right fit for her. I have another daughter who's currently in college who's younger than the one who will be a senior at Willamette this year, who decided she did not want to be at the same institution as both her mother and her sister. So she ventured out to a similar type of institution. But yeah, it was great. It was a great thing to be able to be a part of that process with both of them.
that's awesome. So you said a similar institution. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Willamette and what it's like and what makes it distinct?
Yeah. First of all, you just said something that a lot of people say
Oh
when
no, did I pronounce it wrong?
yeah, but that's okay. That's okay. We get that all the time. We get Willamette or Willamette. It's a difficult word for people who aren't from the region. Willamette is a word that is, there's a huge Willamette River. We are located
Oh
in the
yeah.
Willamette Valley. So it's really common to those of us who are from this region. But if you're not from around here, people often have a hard time. So I will tell you the trick of knowing how to say our name is it's Willamette, damn it. That's our little
I'll
code.
never
It's
forget.
Yep, you won't. You don't ever forget. It's silly and kind of funny, but it really does help people remember how to say Willamette. So Willamette's, we're a private liberal arts college. We're supported by some excellent graduate programs as well. We have been here longer than any institution west of the Mississippi. So we have a really long history in this region, which is a special part of who we are. The Northwest has kind of grown up around Willamette. I think there are lots of unique things about us. I could use our entire time just talking about Willamette, but one thing that's unique is that we are directly across the street from the Oregon State Capitol. We're
Okay.
the institution in the United States with the closest proximity of anyone to a state house. And that's really interesting for students who are interested in actually a very wide range of topics, but certainly for those who are interested in politics or policy. We have quite a location for that. We also are right across the street from one of the state's largest hospitals. So
Oh,
again,
okay.
that really helps our pre-med program and those students who are interested in anything health related. So we have a very distinctive and wonderful location. I think another thing that makes Willamette unique is our motto, and this kind of sounds corny because who talks about their motto, but the motto at Willamette started way back in the day and it's still very applicable. It's not unto ourselves alone are we born. And it's this
Hmm.
idea of being in connection with other people, of serving other people, of leading in a way that is significant, that has impact. We are not a place that is helping students gain knowledge just to walk away and be smarter. We are a place that really wants students to learn something here that is significant to who they are going to be in the world. It's about taking knowledge and putting it into action. And that all just sounds like a lot of words, but it is something that we really talk about a lot here and challenge students all the time throughout their 4 years with us. How are you going to live the motto? What are you going to do with this degree that's going to have an impact on someone? How are you going to lead and serve in a way that matters? That's a real heart to everything we do here at Willamette. And I think that's kind of different. I'm not sure that
Yeah.
all places have that. So I'm really proud of that. And it really does resonate to this when we talk about the motto and putting knowledge into action. It really resonates with the kinds of students who I think ultimately choose Willamette and thrive here.
So that brings me to a thought. Does that motto play into how you choose or how you make the choices for admissions?
Yeah, I mean, we choose students based on a very, very holistic, application review process, which I think is similar to many of our peers. We like to look at everything that a student puts in their application. We like to really consider the entire package. But when students do either tell us specifically, we have a question that says, why are you interested in Willamette specifically? And when a student says, I learned about the motto and that's what I needed to know, that really stood out to me. That is something that resonates back and forth. That's okay. This is a student who not only is demonstrating that they know a lot about Willamette by mentioning the motto in their application, but this is somebody for whom that really does make sense. So yeah, I think we look for that understanding. We also look for students who are leaning toward or have practiced in some way some level of service or leadership or an inclination toward those ideas of having an impact already. Not every student has the opportunity to do that in
Sure.
high school or in their prior experience, but if they do and they've seized on that and understand why it matters, and that comes through in their activities section on their application, that's pretty meaningful to us. And we look at that really broadly. It can be impact in your family, you're looking after younger siblings throughout the week, or it can be in school where you've started a new club, or you're organizing things around social justice, or any of those kind of traditional school activities. It can be through work, part-time work that you've done. There's lots of different modes for that to come through that are really broad, but I think that piece is something we look for in the application that relates to the motto.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense. If your goal in school is to just get the knowledge or just get the degree and not use it outside or to help others, then you're probably not going to fit in very well with the rest of the kids who are there or the rest of the students, and it might not be a right situation, even if you've got other qualifications.
Yeah, we have a real culture at Willamette of involvement. I think there's a recognition that students are here to learn a lot of things during these really impactful,
Yeah.
developmental years. Our student body is fairly traditionally aged. The vast majority of them are coming out of high school and coming to us. Doesn't mean that we're not really excited about transfer students and non-traditionally aged students, but the majority are kind of in that developmental age group where they're growing and learning so many things that don't just come through study in the classroom and discussion with professors and peers. They're learning significantly through those things that they're doing extracurricularly or co-curricularly as well. And so we're interested when they're applicants in what those things might look like when they get to us and how we can help foster that. And again, some students don't necessarily have that in their record and they're still a really good fit for Willamette. I think when they get here, they realize there is opportunity for everybody to be in a leadership or an impactful position if they look for it when they get here.
Yeah. It's almost the culture can change the individual just as the individual has an impact on the culture.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. Yeah, I think that's really true.
So kind of a big thing that's happened recently is we had some Supreme Court decisions surrounding affirmative action, and like for me, it's like, oh, that's interesting. I'm trying to read about, trying to understand more about it. But for you, it had to have been a bigger deal. There had to have been more of an impact than it was on the rest of us. So what was that like for you?
It's been such a big deal in higher ed this entire year, as we've known that the case was pending and that we would get a decision in the summer. I think everybody has been kind of bracing for this
Mm,
and trying to prepare as much as possible for what this might mean. And I'll say, I mean, personally, I feel like there's still a lot of room for affirmative action in decision making. I feel like the desire for and the importance of diversity of background in our classrooms has been proven to be important.
yeah,
Every study,
yeah.
right, tells you that that's a good thing for learning. So I think, would it be wonderful to not need to have special affirmative action policies in place? Yes, that would be a fabulous world to live in. The
Mm,
fact that we're not quite there means that this feels premature and something that that we will need to work through. The good news for Willamette, and I think for a lot of institutions in the US, is um, we get to say yes to a lot of students without having any sorts of quotas or
mhm.
numbers that are part of the contention around why this case came up in the first place. We get to build a diverse and interesting class even without really overt affirmative action policies. It's those highly selective places that are really the target of this
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
issue, in my opinion. So it will still change some of the things that we do, but I have real hope and trust that we are still going to attract and get to enroll the really diverse and interesting group that we've always gotten to enroll at Willamette. So it's a problematic and turbulent time, and yet it's not going to undermine all of our efforts, at least not here.
Oh, that's great news. My son went to community college, and it was a very interesting thing because we went to his graduation this last spring, and honestly, we were among the very few white families in that audience, and there are so many kids who are first generation, or they're graduating with their parents, and I'm like, I think I think they're going to be okay. They're not, maybe they didn't get into the elite school, but their opportunities are out there. And it sort of sounds to me like you know whatever whatever is going on at the elite schools, where it's really hard to get in, like it's super competitive. It still seems like there's a lot of opportunities for education, and it sounds like you're like Willamette is. Did I get that right? Anyway, close, I think. um uh anyway, you all have are part of the solution. That's amazing. I'm glad to hear that.
I hope so. Yeah. Congratulations on your son finishing.
Oh,
That's
thanks.
exciting. Yeah. I think, I do think there's so much intersectionality with our student bodies these days that, and you never want to make assumptions about any of that, but there is still a lot of room for us to support students who are first in their family, for students who are low income. Those things are not in any way, a part of this
Exactly.
decision. And Willamette does a really good job with those things. A quarter of our students are first in family, more than a quarter are generally falling into the low income bracket. So those things we get to continue to do in the way that we are really proud of.
Good. Just looking at my notes to see what I was going to ask you about. So is there anything about the most recent application year that has stood out to you, or anything that seems different, or has it more or less been the same as always?
it never seems like it's the same. There's always
Yeah.
it's always something new and different to think about. I think this year there was a little bit of collective sluggishness that people in my line of work noticed, where students
Interesting.
were a little bit slower in some cases to apply and slower to make their decisions. That's not entirely unheard of. That can vary from year to year, but there was a sense, and we heard this from our partners who work in schools too, the high school counselors and the independent counselors who help students. They felt like they were having to kind of really push this class into the process. So for whatever reason, there was that. I think, COVID continues to have an impact. We're still seeing that, and will for a while, I'm sure, but we're still seeing in students' transcripts that are part of their applications where certain things fell down because it
Oh,
didn't
sure.
remotely, or someone was, their family was struggling, or whatever it might have been. So there does still seem to be that COVID impact in the application. However, I was surprised by how few questions we got for like visitors coming to campus, or our biggest admission programming, like for admitted students in the spring. We didn't see anyone really asking questions about, is this safe to attend? Is there social distancing? Do I need to wear a mask? It feels like the vast majority of people have just said, we are ready to be back in the world. We want to visit. We want to meet other students. We want to talk to other parents. People felt really ready for that this year. We had our largest admitted student visit day this spring, the largest one I can remember in my time at Willamette. And that, I think, really says something about the rebounding of people being excited about being back in this process again.
Yeah. It does. It's always hard to say, well, it's over now, but it does sort of feel
Right.
to me like we're in a state where, like you said, people want to be back to normal. We've taken precautions, and it's not causing the same problems it was a few years ago. And so like, let's get back into it.
Yeah.
You said something about like sluggishness, and I was wondering, because I've talked to parents and students, it sounds like the number of applications, like, well, I'll put it this way, from the parents and student side, the number of schools they apply to has gone up like a lot. Like they're
Mm-hmm.
applying to 20, which is crazy. 30, I heard one student say. Like, what? This is so different from when I was applying. Does that align with sort of your experience, and is that maybe part of what's going on, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. That is definitely a thing. I don't know that it's brand new this year, but it's been inching up where students are applying to more and more. And I think there's a variety of reasons. Things like the common application and the way it works certainly have allowed students over the years to up that number of how many places they apply to. And that on the one hand, it's a very good thing. It's a good tool for students to be able to streamline their application process and fit this big thing that they're doing, this big search and application process, into what is already hopefully a busy senior year.
Oh yeah.
good to streamline that. But I'm not sure right now that students are always getting the right information about why you would want to pare that down a little bit before the actual application process. There's a lot of information out there that sort of lauds students who get into lots of places. I think there's also fear from students that, what if I'm not going to get into any? I have to cast a really wide net, especially if they're so uber focused on the highly selective places.
Right.
So those things are feeding into it. I also think just in the last few years coming out of COVID, during COVID, because so many places dropped test scores as a requirement, ACT or SAT scores, that certainly opened up students to feeling like, hey, I can apply to a place that I otherwise didn't think I was eligible for. But I'm a tremendous day-to-day classroom student. I have this beautiful transcript. I just don't happen to be a great test taker. So now I can apply to places that are really just going to focus on that day-to-day work. So I think that's upped the number for some students as well. It makes our work trickier, certainly,
Yeah.
because we used to be able to count on, 1 in 4 of the students who apply to Willamette, we know will choose Willamette. And now it's 1 in 10 or 1 in 20, or, it throws the sort of very imperfect science of this into an even more imperfect place.
For sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, so you must get into a situation where like either you have offered acceptances to more students than you think you need and you don't get enough, or I mean that's got to be tricky. Do you ever end up in that situation where you're like, what do? We need more kids to to accept.
Yeah. Oh, this is a very common part of the spring season for lots of colleges, is kind of making the calculated guess on how many offers of admission should we make, how many should we put on a wait list if we use a wait list, when do we go to that wait list if it doesn't look like students are responding in the way we had planned. Or you have the opposite problem of, we've put out this number of offers of admission and now we have 100 students or 200 students more than we expected saying they'd like to come, and now where are we going to house them, and how are we going to have enough seats in our classes for that? So both situations have certainly happened at Willamette and at places like Willamette. I think it particularly affects smaller places where there really is only so much wiggle room, for additional people. We're really fortunate that this year we hit our target almost exactly. We have just a really nice, full, interesting, well-qualified, wonderful class. And that says a lot, more than anything, about our faculty and who they are and how interested students are in studying with them.
Well, congratulations. What's roughly the size of that class, by the way?
525 is our goal, and that's just right where we're sitting. That doesn't include our transfer students, which actually transfer students are really excited about Willamette. This year we were hoping for about 30 or 35, and we have closer to 45 or 50. I haven't looked in the last few days, but we
That's exciting.
Our target goal. Yeah, I think many of them we haven't dug into all of the data around our transfer population this year, but I think a number of them are students, maybe like your son, who did a traditional, I'm going to go get my associate's degree and then think about completing a 4-year degree after that. We're set up well to accommodate students coming out of that kind of preparation. But we also had, I think, a fair number of students who were admitted to Willamette a year ago, and for whatever reason, they chose something else. And then this year they looped back and said, yeah, I should
actually.
Yeah, actually, I think this should have been my choice. And so those are some of our transfers this year too, which is not atypical, but we're excited about that population.
Yeah, my son didn't even apply to 4-year schools because it was right in the middle of COVID. And he was like, well, I'm going to be on a Zoom call. It really doesn't matter. Like, and I need to get these general education requirements out of the way. And so like, I'm going to take 2 years to just get the associate's degree and get, and he really thrived in that.
Yeah.
And is transferring this fall. So
that's perfect. Yeah.
So do you take into account SAT scores then? Do you are test optional, or do you require it still?
So we are test optional, and we actually were test optional quite a bit before the pandemic. We did our faculty did a pretty comprehensive study of test scores and how they correlate to either success or lack of success at Willamette,
Right.
and found very little significance there, very little correlation there. When they took a look at this, it really was about that student who I kind of mentioned before, who is a really good day-to-day classroom student who knows how to just do the work.
Yeah.
That's the student who comes to Willamette and can really thrive. And they don't have to have been a perfect student coming out of high school. There's something left for us to help them with, but they do need to know how to do the day-to-day work. That's a student who thrives here, and test scores may or may not have anything to do with that. So we are not test blind. A lot of schools have gone fully test blind and won't allow a student to submit scores at all. We do allow a student who is a good test taker and feels like that really enhances their application. We're happy to include test scores if they'd like us to do that. For us, they can only help you, they can't hurt you.
Okay.
So
Right. That makes a lot of sense. So like, in other words, if you submit a score that's a little lower than than the school is expecting, then you can just say, well, we'll just pretend that doesn't exist. Is that how it works?
yeah, I mean, we can't entirely pretend it doesn't exist for reporting reasons. We do
Sure.
still include that in our profile, and it's important to be transparent about that. But if everything else in that student's application is looking like it's the right indication that they can be successful here, then it's not going to hurt their admission decision. It's not going to hurt their aid, their merit scholarship. Those things will not be affected.
Oh, that's good news. Let's see. I was going to ask something else, and I should have looked while you were answering that last one. Do you have any tips for like how you could go about the process of applying? What should you do, and maybe some things that you shouldn't that you've seen?
Sure. Yeah. Well, the timing is good for this question. Today, when we're having this conversation, is July 31st. August 1 is when both the common application and the coalition application on SCORE, these things open August 1st and become available for students who are looking to apply in this next cycle. And I'm a big advocate. My daughters, my children could certainly tell you this, but big advocate for starting the process now.
Okay.
For those who go back to school a little bit later in August or in September, you've got some time once the application is open to get going. And it is so much better to have at least as much as you can of this process done before you hit school and get distracted reasonably and rightfully so by all of the things that you're doing that are a part of your senior year. It's a time that starts busy and only gets busier. And if you've already taken time to carefully work on your application, you're just so far ahead of your peers. One of the biggest things that it feels tragic when we see applicants who are clearly qualified and could have done a much better job on their application, and they just didn't because they were rushed. And that just doesn't send good signals to an admission committee. It helps us question your motivation or your organization or your preparation, and those aren't the messages you want to send. So starting early is a big one for me.
Sounds like something I should remember for my taxes, to start early.
There you go. We all tell ourselves we'll do that every year, right?
Yeah, it never happens. What about like you all have? I assume you have essay requirements that you. So what are some suggestions that you have for like what makes an essay good and stand out, and what mistakes have people made that they should avoid?
Yeah. I love the essay. I was an English major way back in the day at Willamette. The essay is one of my favorite things in the application, in part just because it's so different than the other components. The rest of the application is kind of lots of smaller data points or lists, grades, that sort of thing. And the essays, like the students started talking to us in a way that's really unique and helpful. The essays it does two things for us. It's a measure of the student's academic preparation. So,
Sure.
what's their quality of writing? What's their technical ability? Do they know how to literally cross the T's and dot the I's and use
Yeah.
punctuation and capitalization and all of those things? We want to know that the foundation for writing is there because we ask them to do a lot of writing. So it's the technical part, but then it's also the entire application is about us understanding the context for that student in terms of where have they grown up? Who are they? What are their goals? What are they interested in? What's meaningful to them? All of that picture of who they are and who they might be should they come to Willamette. The essay is a great avenue for adding to that context and helping understand their story. So the essay should fulfill both of those things. And I think students get themselves in trouble when if they rush, if they're trying to write their application at 11:30 p.m. before a midnight deadline, it's not going to be their best technical work. They're not going to have it proofread. They're not going to do
Yeah.
those things that they should do. So that's one thing to avoid if you start early. The other thing that I think students get themselves in trouble around is they agonize over what their topic should be.
Okay.
There are prompts that they can write about, but they're pretty broad. And so students worry, what should my topic be? I don't know what to say. I don't know how to make myself stand out. And it's really never about the topic itself. It's far more about how is the student talking about that topic? How is their story around whatever that is coming through uniquely? And I always give the example of maybe one of my favorite essays of all time that I use in writing workshops and stuff is about a student who moved. They moved, it's
Yeah.
not it's not that unique. Lots of people
Nope.
move. But the way they told the story around what that meant for them, how it, helped them be self-reflective, how they had this opportunity to kind of reinvent themselves and be really authentic at their new school. They told a story that was just beautifully done. And I learned so many things about that student because they talked about their move. So I always encourage students to don't agonize about the topic itself, but think about how you're really telling your story. If you make us cry or you make us laugh a little bit, that's always good. I love it when we get kind of emotional about an essay. That's always really fun, but only if it's really, makes sense with what you're writing about.
Yeah, for sure. I'm always impressed with authors who can write about a topic you think going in is boring. And then about halfway through, you're like, oh, wow, how did I spend, 2 hours reading about this thing or much less for an essay, but
Exactly. Yeah, no, if we learn something, I love it when a student talks about something that they're passionate about and I learn something about an interest or a topic that I knew nothing about. That's really impactful. That will make me remember that student. And that's what you want. You're trying to stand out and be, remembered for your uniqueness. And the essay really allows you to do that.
yeah. It occurs to me that there's some synergy between that and like applying for a job, using your resume and how do you stand out, and some people obsess over some of those details, and in reality what you're looking for oftentimes when you're hiring someone is, are they an authentic person? And that's what we really, as a hiring person, that's what I really want. Is that
Exactly.
similar? Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it speaks too to some of the, you hear about these cases where somebody didn't write their own essay. I mean, now
Uh,
this is a whole topic with Chat GPT and AI and, what we want to actually know what you can do, not a tool that's can be a great tool, but in this instance, we want to know what you can do and we want to know what you authentically are going to say about yourself. And it shouldn't be written by a robot or your parent or anybody else. It's because that really is, we're looking for the you in all of that. And it's really important.
Yeah. I also think people underestimate how much their personality can show up. And like, if you're, I really think this AR thing, I mean, this could be a whole nother topic, but like, they're so boring. These robots are so boring. You know, they're very good at what they're doing, but it's also like, I would not hire this robot because it's so lacking in personality, almost
Yeah.
by design.
Yeah, those essays that we've looked at that are sort of sample, can ChatGPT write, a great college essay? I think most people are coming to the conclusion that it's noticeable that it's not coming from the person and the core of that person. And so you're doing yourself a disservice, I think, if you don't really do what the essay is asking you to do and give us something of yourself.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, not from the perspective of an application, but from the perspective of a person. Like you should write your own stuff, because
Yeah,
you're probably more interesting than you think.
exactly.
Um, well, great. I think this has been a wonderful conversation. I'm excited to pronounce Willamette correctly,
You got it. Good job. You got it. Yeah.
and I will try to pronounce Willamette correctly more often in the
There you
future.
go.
And so where can people find out more about Willamette or about you, and whether they're applying for school or whether they're just interested in the whole process?
Yeah, absolutely. So our website is just willamette.edu.
Perfect.
And I'm easy to find on the website. I'm the only Dean of Undergraduate Admission. I'm the only Sue in the Office of Admission for the College of Arts and Sciences. So I'm easy to find, but my phone number for the Office of Admission, happy to give that out. It's 503-375-5337. And my email address through work is my first initial S, my last name Corner, like meet you on the corner. scorner@willamette.edu. And I'm really happy, as is our entire staff, to help answer questions about college search generally. We love to talk about Willamette specifically also, but really, I think it's important for students and families to know that we're here as a resource just to help with what can be an overwhelming process. It does not have to mean that we're just telling you about who we are. We can answer those general questions and are always happy to do so.
Well, that's wonderful. Again, thank you for the conversation, and hopefully we'll have a chance to reconnect in the future.
Thanks, John. I appreciate you having me. It was great to talk with you.